health care for everybody. And that so all the dentists and their patients get um, prescription drugs. And so this was an analysis of prescription drugs. So what's going to be missing from this are diseases that don't have prescriptions for them, like infertility, birth defects, miscarriages. They don't have any way to treat that with a pill. So these are diseases that they are attempting to treat with pills. And when the blue line are the dentists, and that the pink line are the controls. Well, the pink line are people with amalgam fillings in their teeth. So the controls, I call this a study with a dirty control, is that the control, so you're looking at a lot of mercury versus not as much mercury. You're not looking at no mercury. Where you're looking at no mercury, all these pink columns would be down here be looking like the neurological one. So if you look at, and so if you think of this as showing you what mercury does, that we have a treatment for, it causes mental illness, psychiatric, neurologic, which is what you're working with your dad, psychiatric and neurologic, is both crazy and neurologically impaired. Here's the ringer, lungs. So it ends up damaging your respiration. And here's the other one, heart. So the major reasons for people dying, the biggest reason for heart transplant, and if you notice when they came up with heart transplants, the first 3 people to get transplants were dentists, because they had what's called idiopathic dilated cardiomyopathy, which the heart gets big and flabby and doesn't beat. That's because the mitochondria died, and that's mercury. And so when you look at cardiovascular disease, this isn't necessarily heart attack. It very likely is IDCM, idiopathic dilated cardiomyopathy, which is where the heart gets big and flabby and can't pump. And that's what killed Roosevelt, among other things. So anyway, it would be nice to have David Geyer did a study of people with amalgam fillings in Florida. The governor of Florida gave him access to the welfare database, and he found that the more amalgam fillings, the more arthritis, the more asthma, and there was one other that started with an A, and he basically said at his lecture, he said, and I'm still working on the A's. And so, wait a minute. Mercury screws
William, do we have people in the waiting room?
Yes, we do.
Let them in.
So this is so exciting what you're just, I think you're gonna have to repeat yourself. Sorry. So I just posted a message that we will start in 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So if we can stop sharing.
You can let people in.
Yeah, but Tabitha, vamos a comenzar en orden.
Okay.
In order. So if you could stop sharing for now, and then we're going to introduce. There's some people already. Let's get them in.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard. And we're going to what we're going to do, we're going to start with the basics. There's a lot of new people, and then we'll just move on to, I have some questions here that we have prepared.
Dentist, that slide is perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah, I know.
It's really amazing.
Cool. Well, that's 2012, so that's 14 years old, 16 years old. It's not like we don't know this stuff.
Yeah,
so people underestimate mercury, David. They don't really get it sometimes.
There's a whole cartel about using mercury, and it's part of your gold cartel. But don't forget the dentist, because they see that as a threat to their livelihood.
Of
It's
course.
like
That's the point.
William turning them down on putting a deadly poison in their child's mouth. In my book, I detailed the death of a 3-year-old child in the dental chair. And both the dentist and the dental hygienist testified that they did not realize that they had put a deadly poison in the child's mouth. And the autopsy showed that they put enough fluoride in that child's mouth to kill 8 children.
My God.
So, and so what kind of education do they have if they don't even know that they're putting a deadly poison in a baby's mouth? I mean, you know, they get, oh, it's good. Make sure everybody gets it.
Exactly.
And we'll give you money to do that. So, livelihood.
So, okay. So we're going to start. Let's see. One moment.
With the basics, start the record.
Yeah, it's already recording. So let
Okay.
me just admit there's more people coming in. Excellent. So I will just ask everybody to keep their mics closed, and after the presentation, we will have a short Q&A session. So let me see what's going on here.
Inside the trailer is an amazing moving floor, which forwards and backwards.
There you go. There's one that's gone. Okay. It's just me.
That's what the just means question, David. Did you kiss Boyd Haley from me?
I don't think he would appreciate that.
He doesn't do email. He had a stroke. So, and he can't use his computer. So
Is he okay now? Is he well? Not so well.
he couldn't walk for a while, so he's better now. He can walk,
Okay.
but you know he's not robust. He's 86 years old, and it really knocks him down.
That's a shame to hear. So okay. So a very warm welcome again to David, who has graciously granted us another interview and presentation here. Welcome, everyone. And welcome all the Brazilians that have joined our group in the last couple of weeks. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with the very basics. You know, David, thank you for being with us, and let's jump right in. What is OSR?
Is my screen sharing?
No, you're not sharing yet.
Okay. Let me share my screen and I'll show you a picture of OSR.
Yes, you need to ask for permission, David. Try to share, and then William allows you to do it.
I had allowed it already, so I think it's supposed to be possible. Yeah, there he is.
There we go.
Yeah, that's working.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me move this over here. So this molecule is the beginning of OSR. Boyd calls it a prosthetic molecule. It's a carbon ring, and it's 6 carbons. I call it the stop sign or ball and chain. And that what happens is that he hung 2 arms on it, here and here, and those arms are long and flexible. So let me play this, and I think you can hear the audio. Nope, no audio today. So basically, these long floppy arms attract mercury like a magnet. They also attract arsenic, lead, cadmium, and as you can see, this stop sign has the blue is a nitrogen, and the red is an oxygen, so that's called a carboxyl group.
Mm-hmm.
And this actually is a flawed one because there is no nitrogen here. That's in the wrong place, but I got the wrong animation, but it's okay. The sulfur are what attract the heavy metals. All heavy metals love sulfur. And so the only way to get rid of heavy metals is to attract them with sulfur. by putting long floppy arms on a ball and chain, what it does, it converts, it completely covers up the electrons on the metal so that it no longer binds to you. And by having floppy arms, it doesn't take any energy to do that. And so the mercury makes a choice of putting out energy to distort your proteins. For example, it'll get stuck in a membrane, it'll pry the membrane apart, it'll get stuck in hemoglobin, which is designed for iron, but it knocks the iron loose and pries the protein around so that it can fit in there. Well, that takes energy. So along comes this molecule and says, say, how would you like to have an energy-free bond? And that's exactly what it does. It turns it back to the condition that it was in the ground. If you took all the elements of the planet and said, you know, oh, okay, let's mix them all together, and how do I stop sharing here? I don't want to share. Anyway, if you here, stop sharing. So if you take all the elements of the planet and mix them around, you would find exactly like what we have on the planet. You have an ore, which is mercury, that is a polymer of sulfur, mercury, sulfur, mercury, sulfur, mercury, and that's a rock. That miners dig that out with hammers and chisels and then have to heat it to get the mercury loose. That's where mercury comes from, is the ore cinnabar. And so essentially OSR turns mercury that's in your body back to a single molecule of OSR with a ball and chain hooked to it. Because that carbon ring isn't going to go anywhere. It basically cements that molecule in a point in time. It makes it a particle that's insoluble, can't go anywhere. So your body puts a little hook on it on the bottom of that ring and drags it out into the stool, and it's excreted that way harmlessly. And you can take that mercury, hook it up to OSR, and stuff it down the mouth of a rat or a dog or a cat, and it doesn't hurt them at all. And so 1,000 times more mercury than would kill the animal hooked to OSR causes no problem at all. So that's how we know it's inert. And inert means it does not have any free electrons. So it's not going to bind with anything. It takes an enzyme in the body called a CYP enzyme to get it so it'll even hook up with glutathione. So it's inert. So that's OSR. It's a
very good. Excellent. David,
It sounds like a miracle. It's amazing.
It's excellent. So excellent explanation. So, but there's a lot of worry, you know, people keep asking once and again about this new molecule of OSR and mercury or the heavy metal. Number one is how long does it take to leave the body? And people are very worried that it may stay in the body for some time. And, you know, they have all these thoughts about it and they want to have clarity on that. What are your thoughts on that?
It takes it a long time to get out of the body. The excretion of the molecule is faster than your body excretes mercury, but it's not rapid. The problem is not the leftover molecule. And the problem is their awareness of other chelators. Because you can take all the chelators that have been touted over the last century as being useful for one thing or another, whether it's EDTA for lead, DMSA or DMPS for mercury. And you can take an animal, give it a lethal dose, and give it as much EDTA, DMPS, DMSA as you want to, all of the animals are going to die. An LD1 100 kills 100. There is no protective effect at all from the existing chelators. On the other hand, if you give a rat a lethal dose, first give it the OSR, and then you give it a lethal dose of mercury, none of them die. It's 100% protective. If you give it a 10-fold lethal dose, none of them die. After they killed a lot of rats, Dr. Haley got tired of killing rats. And so he invented a new way to kill rats. And so what he did is he gave them a lethal dose, a 14-fold lethal dose. That would kill, it's called 1400, LD 1400, a 14-fold lethal dose, withheld the OSR for 25 minutes, and then solubilized it in a solution and injected it underneath the flap of skin on the belly. They're all in a coma. It's the nicest way to kill a rat. It's not harmful to the rat. The rat's going to die. He injected them. They're in a coma within a matter of seconds. And so he put these little unconscious rats in back in their cage, and went home to dinner. And he came back in the morning expecting to do autopsies. And 4 of the rats, 4 out of 6, were looking for breakfast. Nothing on the planet has ever saved even 1 rat for an LD 100, and he saved 4 out of 6. But look at what that shows you. 2 of them died in that 25 minutes. So how fast did OSR have to bind up that mercury to save the other 4?
Imagine.
If 2 of them are dead in 25 minutes, it won't save a dead rat. That's what we know. It's not Lazarus. It's not going to save a dead rat. But if they're still alive a little bit, all of them survived. So when they let them live out a normal lifespan, they were apparently healthy rats. And at the end of the experiment, which is several weeks down the road, they autopsied these animals and analyzed the amount of mercury in them. And there is a ton of mercury in every organ in that rat. It's bound to NBMI, and it was causing them no problem. So there was mercury in the paw, in the kidney, in the heart, in the brain, in substantial amounts. I mean, he tried to kill him with 14 times the amount would kill 1 rat. So, okay, it's a lot of mercury. But if they got OSR in time before they died, the mercury got bound up and it didn't hurt them all. They were healthy, happy rats. They had normal weight, they had normal diet, normal nutrition. And so I understand people that are familiar with the utter failure of medicine to treat these poisons in the past with these water-soluble chelators, that they would be concerned about stuff left over in their body. Aren't they concerned about the mercury in their body? If you want the mercury in your body to quit poisoning you, you take some OSR. If you want to worry about it, you can go ahead and worry about it, and worry's bad for you.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, thank you, David, for that. So the mercury, can we just maybe talk about this bad boy? I mean, I think mercury is one of the worst, if not the worst, of the heavy metals. Can you tell us a little bit about it? And can you maybe after compare a little bit also with other metals, like what happens when you also have lead and other heavy metals in the body at the same time?
Yeah, of course. The toxicologists have determined that mercury is the most poisonous element known to mankind that's not radioactive. That plutonium and cesium beat it out a little bit because they'll not only poisonous, but they'll break your DNA. And mercury has more than 250 symptoms of mercury intoxication. And the one that everybody notices are the brain, because the brain has lots of sulfur in it. And that when it's not working right, you tremor, you lose your thought process, you get foggy, you can't remember shit, that you can't see. That if you go to Wikipedia and say mercury poisoning, there are at least 5 different symptoms in your eyes alone that you don't have, you lose color discrimination, you have a dimming of vision, you get cataracts in your eye, you have a loss of visual acuity. And so, and that's just one organ. That's your eye. And so the heart, we were talking about a disease of the heart. It's called IDCM, idiopathic dilated cardiomyopathy. It's where the heart gets big and flabby and doesn't beat enough to move the blood around. So you end up swollen everywhere and then die. If they don't give you a heart transplant, we take the heart out of somebody else. IDCM, when you analyze the mercury in a heart that died of a heart attack, and that's not a good thing, versus an IDCM heart, there are 22,000 times more mercury in the IDCM heart than the heart with a heart attack. So why do they call it idiopathic? Idiopathic means they don't know the pathology. I say idiopathic means the idiots can't figure out the pathology. Is that if I took an animal and I injected 22,000 times more mercury in its heart, I think it would probably die. So why do we say we can't figure out what's wrong with this heart? Because they have no treatment for it. So they call it idiopathic. And so that's heart that in, I'm still sharing my screen, aren't I?
No, you're not. Not in this moment, no.
Let me again share my screen. Well, I don't know why. Share settings, I don't know anyway. Well, for some reason I can't.
You have a permission to share your screen. You can do it.
See if I can find that share. It says share settings. I don't want to share settings.
In Zoom, there's
There we go.
a place called share.
Okay, good.
There you
Yeah.
are.
And so
Yeah.
we were talking about this earlier. When we're talking about mercury, who's exposed to mercury? It's hatters in New England. They were crazy because they used mercury chloride to make a hat. The gold miners in Ecuador, we treated them with mercury, with OSR for their mercury poisoning. And here's a study that was done in Massachusetts on the dental personnel in Massachusetts. And these are dentists. And that if you look, 237% more crazy dentists, psychiatric, and neurologic means that they can't walk or they're shaking or there's, tremors and stuff like that. 763% more than the control. Crazy and can't walk is 280% more. But look, lungs too, 146% more respiratory illness, 168% more cardiovascular disease. And that I want to point out that the controls in this are people with mercury fillings in their teeth. That these are dirty controls. They did not have the ability to use the data and say who has no mercury filling, so who's never had a mercury filling. All of these pink lines would be way down here by the baseline, in my opinion, if we had a clean control. But because it's a computer study, they didn't actually see anybody. They didn't see any patients. But still, that's the kind of stuff that mercury does. But look at these are only illnesses that they have drugs for, because this was a study of drugs. How about illnesses that they don't have drugs for? Well, vision, for example. They can't give you a pill to make your eyesight return, can they? So there's gobs of things that mercury does to the human body, or animal body for that matter, that are not good for us. And that the only way to reverse that is either not get mercury in your body. And I have to tell you about it's an autopsy of just one, a woman driving in Los Angeles, hit a bridge abutment and killed herself and her fetus. The fetus was 6 months old. The mother was 30 years old. And when you counted the number of fillings, the amount of mercury in her brain was just like all the other people. 100 people in the study, and they showed the amount of mercury in your brain the day you die is proportional to the number of fillings in your teeth. Nice straight line graph using a very, very precise way of measuring mercury called neutron activation analysis. Well, the dead fetus got analyzed too. The fetus was 60% of the mother in 6 months. Well, if your baby in the womb is 60% of mama, in 9 months, it's going to be 90%. You get a generational accumulation of mercury. I've had people that benefited, told me that the OSR dramatically improved some problem they'd been dealing with since they were kids, and they'd never had a mercury filling. Mercury goes from mother to child, either from the breast milk or in the womb. And so it's a generational poison, and that there's absolutely no reason why anybody needs to be exposed to mercury. And where the biggest exposures to mercury is by far dentistry. Otherwise, you wouldn't have got this nice straight line graph of the amount of mercury in your teeth. But looking at the fetus, is that if your mother had mercury fillings, then it's
Right.
on and on, generation after generation. So
What about fathers? What about the father? Can the father give through the sperm mercury to his son?
No.
Okay.
The reason
I was asked that question.
well, the reason being, I should say, probably not. The reason being is that the father makes a little swimmer, has a little teeny piece of DNA and a long tail, and it's sperm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tiny compared to the mother's egg. So all of the mitochondria in the child come from mother, because she's got an egg and she's got mitochondria. And so the mitochondrial DNA and mom and dad DNA come together. If the father DNA has been damaged, you can get birth defects. And so most birth defects, the fetus dies. And so it ends up in a miscarriage. So if you go to a dental office and start asking the women in dentistry, have you had a miscarriage? Oh, yes. And miscarriages are rampant throughout the dental profession. And but you don't get that same message from the dentist. And that's because when the sperm gets poisoned, the tail, instead of being straight, is bent. Well, if you're in a race and you've got a bad leg, you get there first, are you? So there is that saving grace of, let's poison the sperm, I suppose. But anyway, so is it possible? Probably. But is it likely? I would say unlikely.
Yeah. David, what about then? Let's talk a little bit about lead on its own. What happens with lead? People are asking a lot about, like we know that lead deposits most of it in the bones and where there is no blood flow. And can you tell us a little bit about what happens with lead in the body, and what happens when you have both lead and mercury?
Yes, and how can OSR eliminate lead first?
Mm-hmm.
And tell us about lead and mercury together, like this great combination.
All of my videos on YouTube, the only one that has been censored was a little animation that I put in because Boyd Haley told me about a study by Schubert, a 1978 study. This is not new, it's been done 1,000 times since. And Schubert said toxicology is missing the boat. They want to look at mercury separate from lead, separate from cadmium, separate from, and so he took lead, mercury, and cadmium and began to do studies where he exposed animals to both lead and mercury, or lead and cadmium, mercury and cadmium. And what he found is mercury's the driver. Mercury is by far the nastiest of the heavy metals.
Mm.
But if you take enough mercury to kill one animal out of 100, it's called an LD1, and you took the amount of lead that would not kill a single animal, not even one animal would die if you gave, it's an LD 0.2, 20%. If you gave 1,000 animals this amount of lead, only 0.2% of them would show any sign of illness, die. So, but if you take an LD1 of mercury and a 0.2 LD of lead, all of the animals die, 100%. Found the same thing with cadmium, only not quite as dramatic. So mercury is the driver, but these other heavy metals combine to make both of them more toxic than either one. And Tabitha asked, how do we get lead out of your body? And that you can get it out of the blood easy. Because when you take some OSR, it goes into the body, circulates around, it rides on the side of the protein in the blood called albumin. There's a little fat pad on the side of albumin that will carry hormones around to different parts of the body. Well, OSR hops on that and gets carried to the nether world of every corner of the body where there is blood. Your body knows that it doesn't need lead, and lead looks kind of like calcium. So the body parks lead in the calcium-rich tissues of the bone. And that's the outer layer of your bones. If you pick up a bone and look at it, it's got soft, gooey stuff in the middle, and it's hard on the outside. You can pound on it, and it's hard to get inside. Give it to your dog, and he'll find a way. But the inside of the bone is what the dog wants to eat, not the outside. However, if you got dog food and they have ground bone meal in there, you're giving the dog lead. There was a lady that was taking lead calcium tablets, and she was afraid that she'd get osteoporosis. So she would had a nice supply of calcium tablets, and it turned out that the calcium tablets were made from the bones of horses that were pulled cabs around London, and that she got lead poisoned because the horse's bones were lead poisoned. And that, your dog doesn't eat the outside of the bone, but if you got a pharmaceutical company grinding up the bones and feeding you tablets of lead, the FDA has since required them not to have lead in their calcium. So, but that was a number of years ago. But so lead is in the soil because for 100 years we had lead in gasoline. And so if you want to poison the planet, you put some horrible stuff in gasoline and let it aerosol and then settle on the ground. And it's where you plant your vegetables. Thank you very much. Henry Ford was the guy that wanted lead in the gasoline because he went from a low compression Model T to a high compression or higher compression Model A, and it needed high octane gas. And the easiest, cheapest way to get high octane gas at the time was put lead in it. And so we ended up with the lead in every gallon of gas that was burned between 1929 and 1980. So it's all over the planet. Is it the driver of illness? It can be. There's a book by Wadeen called Poison in the Pot, and that back in the day there was a cider in England that was very famous, and that the king just loved it, and that the king got gout where his big toe would blow up. There's cartoons about it where he couldn't walk, and gout, bad, very painful, and driven by lead. And that, well, how'd the cider? It's an apple. How did the lead get in there? Is that the barrel that they put it in was caulked with lead. That in California, there was a lawsuit. There's a law that says you can't expose people to lead in California unless you tell them you're exposing lead. Then you can do it all you want to. So they went and got a bottle of wine, poured out a glass, and measured the amount of lead in the wine. the lead wasn't in the wine, but it was in the glass from the lead wrapper around the top of the wine bottle. So that just infinitesimal amounts of lead that rubbed off on the top of the bottle made that wine undrinkable. So you say, well, why would anybody in their right mind wrap lead around the top of a wine bottle? And you got to go back to 1500. There was a cork weevil in Spain that decided to make a hole in the cork. And so wine bottles were getting ruined by the weevil eating the cork. And so they said, well, let's just wrap a little lead over there and the weevil can't get cork. Well, they're still doing it today. Is that stupid? Yes, that is stupid. So if you still got wine in your cellar that has a lead wrapper on the top, if you get it in California, it's plastic now. Now we get the plastic problem. But anyway, what they did is they paid, I think, $11 million or something like that to teach the wine steward that after you remove the lead wrapper, you take the towel that you're carrying and wipe the top of it. And now you can pour a glass of wine without lead in it. So, I mean, a simple solution to a stupid problem is wipe the lid of the wine bottle and knock the lead off. So lead and mercury work together, lead and cadmium work together, all of the heavy metals attack sulfur. That's the reason the arms of NBMI are sulfur tipped. Just the tippy end is a sulfur molecule that is really ready to bind to something. And that the heavy metals will give up you to bind that molecule. And let me give you the list of the metals we know it loves. Mercury, it likes that the best. You can't get mercury loose from it. And people worry, oh, what if it lets go of it? It's not going to let go of it until you're cremated. It takes about 1,500 degrees to get it to let loose. And so don't live near a crematorium, because when they burn you, the mercury that's in your body comes out the chimney. And that needs to stop. They need to go back to putting people in the ground, because when you burn them, you take all the heavy metals they've been exposed to in a lifetime and blow it out the chimney. So if you live downwind, or if you got to live near a crematorium, move upwind so that you don't get the stuff spewed over your house every time they burn some geezer like myself that has been exposed to. I used to drive a tractor with the chimney was sitting right in front of me. Push a lawnmower. I see these poor people working on yards that have the blower on their back. Well, good news is now those motors don't have lead in them anymore, but they sure got something else in them. I wouldn't want an internal combustion engine on my shoulders either, but it's a shame. But we know better than this. We know a lot better than this, but things just don't change because you know better. And I like to point out that in 1840, at least 50 years before Beauchamp and Pasteur came up with the discovery of bacteria, that Dr. Semmelweis was a obstetrician in Vienna, the finest medical school in the world at the time. And he figured out, because the students that did an autopsy over here in this room came over and delivered a baby in this room, and the baby died of whatever this person over here had. They said, there must be something on their hands. So he made them wash their hands. And the medical profession was so angry about that they threw him in a mental hospital in Switzerland and beat him to death. So medicine doesn't change because it makes good sense. Your mother would make you wash your hands. The midwives washed their hands, but those doctors, we can't wash our hands. The most recent survey of pediatric doctors was where they put a camera in a room to watch the doctors when they came to examine children in the infection ward. So these are children that have an infection. Half the doctors did not wash their hands between examining this child and examining that child, and that's only 25 years old.
What a nightmare.
So I'd like to see it done again today.
My God. So David, regarding, can we talk a little bit about oxidative stress? So because and maybe also we know that OSR is not attracted, or on the contrary, aluminum is not attracted to OSR. But what happens with the oxidative stress? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. To make it real simple, oxidative stress is a broken piece of water. It's an oxygen molecule and a hydrogen molecule. You know, water has hydrogen on. It looks like Mickey Mouse. It has two hydrogens and an oxygen molecule. So it's oxygen with a little tiny molecule of hydrogen, and it's missing a hydrogen. So that means it's got a negative charge and it wants to bind to something. People say, well, what is oxidative stress? You know, if you've ever left your lawn furniture out in the sun for any length of time, all summer long, and then the next year you go out to sit in it, and the plastic just falls apart, and so you're sitting on the ground instead of your lawn furniture. That's because the sun oxidized the plastic. Everybody is going to die from oxidative stress. Is that if I put a rope around your neck and hung you from the ceiling? The reason your cells die is because of oxidative stress. And that's so. How does your body end up with oxidative stress? Well, mercury, for example, Jesus, I gotta close the door. Get out.
I'm having the same situation here with my dogs. They want to come in.
We're under attack.
We are under attack.
Probably the cat walked by. I have 2 dogs and 1 cat, and they don't get along. Anyway.
Same here.
Anyway, sorry about that, folks. Back to oxidative stress. Everybody's going to die of oxidative stress because that molecule burns you just like the sun burnt the lawn furniture. It is missing an electron. It needs another hydrogen, and that missing hydrogen makes it go out and stick to stuff, and the stuff it's going to stick to is you, and it will kill you. So antioxidants, okay, the sun oxidized, so the reverse of that is antioxidant. OSR is a huge antioxidant, more powerful than almost any, well, actually a lot more powerful than any food that you can find, and it is capable of supplying that electron. And what it does, it takes 3 molecules of oxidative stress at once, binds it with one hand, the other hand is unchanged, so now it's got 3 minuses on this side. So the molecule itself starts out even balanced. There's no charge on it, so it's fat soluble. But when it grabs 3 molecules, it ends up with a negative charge, becomes water soluble, and you pee it right out. So that's oxidative stress, and how OSR gets rid of oxidative stress. So everybody feels better when they take some OSR because it's taking away the oxidative stress. So you got to get enough of it going through you to get rid of the oxidative stress. So then it'll go after the heavy metals because it likes oxidative stress better than it likes anything else. It wants to hook up those 3 molecules of oxidative stress and take them right out. You're going to like that. You're going to feel better, but you got to get enough. I've had people that, you know, were taking a knockoff molecule that's real toxic, and they take them out on the head of a pin. They're never going to get well because that's not enough to get rid of the oxidative stress the heavy metals are causing. You got to get over that hump so it'll go after the metals. And did that explain oxidative stress?
Absolutely. Thank you, to the T. David, let's talk about two other elements here that have been discussed in the group. The first one is gadolinium, and the other one would be uranium. As I understand, there are some tests going on uranium, and it seems to be successful. OSR seems to be successful with it.
Both of those are divalent heavy metals, and that, you know, you can study this thing to death, but basically I see a pattern. is that every single big fat divalent, which means it's got 2 electrons, heavy metal, binds to OSR. Every one we've tested is mercury, arsenic, lead, cadmium, uranium, thorium, and that we didn't even know that gadolinium was a problem back in 2004 or 5 when we were doing these studies. People who have been gadolinium poisoned got some OSR when it was a supplement and recovered. So we assume, based upon what are called a clinical experience, and the naysayers would say, oh, that's just anecdotal. Well, you know, if you were crippled to the point where you couldn't get out of a wheelchair and you took some of this and you got out of the wheelchair, the pain went away, would you call it anecdotal? Would you call that a case report? It's a case report. There are lots of case reports where heavy metal poisoning of almost any kind improves when you take OSR. It's basically a molecule that has 2 free electrons. And so whatever you got, what's poisoning you are heavy metals that have attracted to your tissues. And then to do that, it has to distort your tissues. And so along comes this molecule that says, how would you like to have free floating electrons that will fit to any angle that you want? Like mercury wants it at 180 degrees, iron wants it at 45 degree. OSR doesn't care. It's got floppy arms that are made out of spaghetti. What would you like? And so it basically binds all of them. Equally, well, not quite equally strong. The mercury is the strongest bond, but all of them are going to take, you know, all of them are going to get loose when you get cremated, but none of them are going to get loose when you're in your body, because, you know, you're not going to get above, you know, unless you go to Sao Paulo in the summer, you're not going to get above 110 degrees. So well, it actually takes about 400 degrees. So it's, I joke.
I think, yes, I think we can talk a little bit about redistribution. You know, because people ask, oh, redistribution and mineral depletion,
Okay.
both subjects.
What's interesting, and you know, God bless Boyd Haley, that the molecule doesn't like essential minerals. That, you know, they're talking, all the other chelators are indiscriminate. They take whatever, you know, that you know, there are a lot of divalent metals in your body, you know, that and that if you're just willy-nilly crazy taking them out, you're going to die. That's basically what happens. And there's a particularly nasty one that they use for iron that binds so much of your essential minerals. They'll give you the chelator one day, and then they put the minerals back in the next, and then they give the chelator the next, and they put the minerals back in the next. So you're constantly going to the doctor to either get chelated or with XJade or replenished with the other. Well, why is that necessary? Is because the molecule is indiscriminate. It doesn't care whether you're using that molecule or not. OSR cares. Because if you've got calcium, for example, bound to some tissue, or magnesium bound to some tissue, OSR doesn't like it because it's bound. It's not running around loose. And so what's interesting is, like iron, you have to have iron. The iron is your body's driver of metabolism. Is that iron, your body, if it needs iron, it sticks a handcuff out into the intestine. And when iron comes by, it hooks it up, pulls it back in, takes it to the mitochondria or the hemoglobin, wherever you need iron, and then it puts it in another handcuff. So iron is like a perpetrator. It's never free. It's always bound up. Well, the problem is the heavy metals like those handcuffs. And so when you expose somebody to mercury, you increase the amount of loose iron inside the body. What does that iron do? Why? Well, the same reason your body always has it in handcuffs. The body knows free iron is going to poison you, and you end up with what's called iron overload. Look it up. There are 100 diseases that are caused are called iron overload. And you got atypical Parkinson's, you've got multiple systems atrophy, you've got people that are receiving transfusions for thalassemia. They end up dying from the iron in the transfused blood. Old blood leaks free iron. TBI, if you run your head into a football helmet or butt a soccer ball with your brain, it causes a little bruise. Well, what is a bruise? Bruise is blood that got outside the vessels. Well, where does the iron go? It causes oxidative stress. How does it do that? It gets in the mitochondria, and your mitochondria have a thing called the electron transport system. That's how your body makes energy. It takes a molecule called ADP, takes an electron off and puts it over here, and it's ATP. It's ready for you to lift weights or run or do whatever. That is the only way your body makes energy, is with ADP to ATP with the electron transport system. Iron loves that molecule, but it short circuits the electron transport system and turns it into a free radical production system. And it doesn't just make one molecule at a time, it makes billions. So there was a football player here in San Diego, played for the football team here, and ended up dead with horrible brain disease, and left his body to science. And because he wanted the rest of us to figure out what happened to his brain. And what he had holes in his brain where he banged his head into this football helmet and caused a little bit of bruise. And that iron ate a hole by causing exponential amounts of oxidative stress. He eventually became depressed and crazy and insane and dead. Not necessarily in that order. So oxidative stress, bad for you. How do you prevent oxidative stress? Well, you keep iron bound up. Well, how do you keep iron bound up? Well, you don't expose yourself to heavy metals. And if you have been exposed to heavy metals, you bind them up and take them out. That's the bottom line, is that oxidative stress is what's going to kill us all. There are no exceptions. And the less oxidative stress you have in your body, the happier you're going to be about it.
So this iron production, this free iron production, it has something to do also with the amounts of glutathione that you have in your body, right? In your cells, right?
Glutathione will try to help you out. Glutathione is your body's primary janitor, and that it goes around cleaning up whatever's wrong with you, whether it's exhaust fumes from the Model T or whether it's the mercury from your dental fillings. And that we did a study back when it didn't cost $1 billion, that I think there were mother-child pair or grandmother-child pairs of autistic children and grandma. And that there was a medical office in Florida where they had 10 volunteers, or grandma volunteered the child, and that basically they all got OSR when it was a supplement. And that they took 300 milligrams of OSR, and both the mother and the child took 300 milligrams. Well, you think about that. If your grandma weighs 150 pounds, 300 milligrams per kilogram is going to be less than if the kid weighs 40 pounds. Nevertheless, they both took 300 milligrams. And what they showed was, at the end of 30 days, there was just a little teeny bump in there, reduced glutathione, the kind of glutathione working. I should mention that they all started out low. If you go to look at autistic children or old people, they all have low glutathione. And so 300 milligrams for 30 days, they had a little teeny bump. They didn't quit there. They went on for another 90 days. And at 90 days, all of them were back to either normal or above normal, back to teenage levels in the 70-year-old grandmas. That's a good thing, because if your glutathione levels up, it will pick up, you mentioned aluminum earlier, it'll pick up. Yakety yak, hit your mute.
I'm trying to find out who it is. Let me see.
Sorry.
There you go.
Oh.
No. I'm sorry. David, you have to activate your sound. Sorry, I mistakenly deactivated your microphone on your left side. There you go. Sorry.
It wasn't the dog this time.
Sorry.
I've isolated the dog. She can go bother the cat every time. Let's see, where was I? I was talking about glutathione.
Yes.
Glutathione is the primary janitor of your body. And people say, well, what if my glutathione's low? Yeah, we'll take some OSR. That's what that study showed, is that if you take it for 90 days, your glutathione goes back to normal. So if you've got a low glutathione, we know you have oxidative stress. Why? Because that's what glutathione is there to do, is to grab the oxidative stress. It's actually, people say, oh, I take pills of it. You can't do that. It doesn't work. I get IV, maybe a little bit help, but not really. There's 1,000 times, and I'm speaking scientifically here, there's 1,000 times more glutathione inside the mitochondria than in your circulating blood. Well, gosh, why did God put all that glutathione inside the mitochondria? That's where oxidative stress, because when you convert that ADP to ATP, there's one molecule of oxidative stress produced. Glutathione is right there to snatch it. So it's a perfect zero-sum program. You need energy, body makes it, makes a molecule of oxidative stress, glutathione snatches it. So that's why it's there. It protects you. And so when you have low glutathione, what do we know? We know you're under oxidative stress, is you're being oxidized. And so what's causing the oxidation? It can be pesticides. It can be heavy metals. It can be free iron. You might be receiving transfusions for some disorder that you have. You might have a bleeding ulcer or something. Oxidative stress is bad for you. You can quote me.
Yes, absolutely. No, and it's, we usually have like a joke, what produces oxidative stress? Today in this planet, life. Life in our planet produces oxidative stress, lots of it. So Tabitha had asked about mineral depletion. Can you talk about that, please?
It doesn't like your essential minerals. That's the interesting thing about it, is if you've got minerals in your body that your body's using, the iron, for example, we've done study after study after study, 8 I think we're at now, showing that you can take any amount of the OSR and your iron doesn't go down. You don't end up with low hemoglobin iron. You don't have free iron, which is the kind that'll kill you, but the kind your body's using is not depleted. So what people are worrying about is the old chelators that were indiscriminate. They went after everything. They didn't care whether you were using it or not. They just gobbled it up. So you end up with XJ, I mentioned earlier, had a 20% mortality. Hey, here's a pill. Take this for your iron. And of course, 1 out of 5 is going to die. Maybe I don't want that. Well, you're going to die of the iron then. So they got you in a tunnel here where you had a choice of this or that. So they've got the fatality down to, I think, 5% now. And how did they do that? They quit giving it to you when you get real sick. 100% of the people taking XJ have serious adverse events, and death is one of them, but pain, all sorts of manner of stuff like that. So that's what happens when you have an indiscriminate chelator. OSR is basically offering the metals of choice. It's not aggressive, it's passive. It says, say, I've got 2 electrons here. Anybody want electrons? And so it's not going after you. it's asking the metal whether it wants 2 electrons. And the metal is there pried open your membrane, or maybe it's glommed into your hemoglobin. You can measure dentists and find that their iron is missing from their hemoglobin. Well, how did that happen? Well, mercury came by and says, "Say, you're holding that nice iron with sulfur. Get out of there. I want it." And so it bends the protein. So iron wants the electrons at a 45-degree angle. Mercury wants it at 180 degrees. So it knocks the iron loose and bends the protein. But it's putting energy out to do that. And along comes OSR and says, "Oh, I can embrace you, and you'll hold me like I like to be held." So it doesn't take your essential minerals unless they happen to be loose. And so I tell people, selenium is a very important mineral. It's in my book from '94 that you need to have a daily dose of selenium, a tiny daily dose, micrograms, not milligrams, 200 micrograms of selenium. Help your body get rid of other metals, including mercury. But it's a divalent metal. So how do you get selenium if you're taking OSR? You take it at a different point in time. So if you take selenium now, wait 4 hours and take your OSR. So don't put them in the stomach at the same time. So it's real simple. Don't put them together. It's like my dog and my cat. You don't want to put them together. Bad.
Same here. Yeah. David, going briefly back to glutathione, we have a question from Dr. Ashish here. He says as follows, he says, is there any data that shows that glutathione levels a few months, for example, 6 months after OSR was stopped? If so, did the level continue to increase? Do they stay the same or do they drop?
The data we have is only 90 days long, and that we've spent $20 million. It'd be a lovely study to do, but you can't afford to do it. We've spent $20 million trying to study this stupid molecule, and you can't kill anybody with it. So presumably, as long as you're not exposed to something else that's going to drive your glutathione back down, it would remain up. But we don't have any data beyond the 90 days. And that's just 10 people, 10 autistic children and 10 grandmas, or 5 autistic children and 5 grandmas. So sorry, we don't have more data. If you can give me a couple $1 million, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, let's work on that. So David, but isn't it like when the cell starts getting clean, so the mitochondria and the cell starts getting clean from the heavy metal, the glutathione increases, the production of glutathione increases in it.
Basically, what happens is that the molecule likes mercury, and it presents a wonderful opportunity for mercury to no longer have to pry your iron binding site apart. Where it really has its impact is inside the mitochondria. Is that we did a study in gold miners in Ecuador, and one of the things that they included in the gold mining study was physical strength. How strong are you? Well, that's a measure of your mitochondria. If you don't know that, I mean, if you lift 100 pounds today, and if you can lift 150 pounds tomorrow, you got stronger, right? So they did a squeeze test. How strong can you grip? And so when they started the study, people can, as hard as you can, okay, as hard as you can, okay. And then at the end of it was only 2 weeks, 2-week study. And at the end of 2 weeks, they were stronger, significantly stronger. Well, what did we do? We improved the function of the mitochondria, so it's making more ATP. That's because 2 things happened. 1, we got the mercury bounded up, and 2, we now know that the way mercury poisons you inside the mitochondria is not the mercury doing something to the mitochondria. Mercury lets the iron loose. which then kills the mitochondria. If you look at the autopsy of Karen Wetterhahn, a toxicologist at Dartmouth, she got 2 drops of dimethylmercury, a really highly absorbed form of mercury, goes through all the blood-brain barriers and everywhere, on the outside of a latex glove. Well, latex has little tiny holes in it. And so the amount of mercury that got on her skin was probably less than you'd put on the head of a pin. Stripped her gloves off, washed her hands, and within minutes she had learned her speech, and in 6 months she's dead. Left her body to science, and she died of oxidative stress in the brain from that little teensy amount of mercury on her glove. Well, mercury doesn't cause oxidative stress. It will not trade an electron with anybody. It wants electrons. It's not going to trade an electron. Iron trades electrons. So that mercury went into her brain, inside the cell, inside the mitochondria, released iron, and that ate her brain. No different than Junior Seau, where he football banged his head on a helmet. Or you could be a warrior in Afghanistan, where you threw a grenade inside a building and it goes off and you're in a little shock wave like that. Or maybe you're a pilot and you're flying F-18 and you crank it over like this and you're pulling 9 Gs. Well, that makes blood leak out of your brain. Blood is supposed to be inside the vessels. When it gets outside the vessels, you have what's called a bruise, like I have on my hand here. That's blood that's outside the vessel. Mm-hmm. That has to be eaten up by something. OSR will eat the iron up. And I had a bruise over here a few weeks ago and it's gone. Okay, take some more OSR. It eats up the free iron. So that's the iron causes the oxidative stress, or copper. Copper is the other one. Those are called redox metals because they'll trade electrons. Mercury won't trade
free,
electrons.
No, the free copper, right?
Free, you got to have copper, but if it's free, it does the same thing as free iron. Interesting. Iron has a valence of 2 or 3. And so I asked Boyd, I said, gee, Boyd, it's only got 2 hands. How did it get a hold of a 3 chelate, a 3 electron molecule? And he said, it's like a dead bug. He said, it's got 2 loose hands here. And so it holds the iron, so it gets a molecule off the nitrogen. Remember how I showed you how a ring with nitrogen on its shoulder? Well, nitrogen has an extra hydrogen that just falls off, and now it holds it like that, so it's like a dead bug.
Jesus,
and,
what an elegant and beautiful molecule it is, isn't it?
It wasn't designed like that, but the molecule figured it out. And I suppose it's like AI. They'll figure out that they're smarter than we are, so we don't need them.
So actually, what you're saying, no, actually the antioxidant properties were discovered afterwards, right? Was
when they started testing it, yeah.
Fantastic.
They've done before Boyd ever sold the first before he sold any, he sent me some because he's a good friend of mine.
You were the guinea pig.
I was a guinea pig, and my wife had Parkinson's, and Boyd knew that Betty, when I met her in 1980, she would sit there and talk to you like this. The head would always move, wobble. If head wobble, you can see her in one of my videos. I think it's Bad Bugs. She's in there getting her teeth cleaned, and her head is just sitting there doing this. And that was made in 1999. And so about 2005 or 7 or something like that, he sent Betty and I some stuff in a screw cap test tube. And that, what do you know when the chemistry professor sends you stuff in a screw cap test tube? He made that stuff in his lab. And that said, take a pinch. And I said, well, how many milligrams is a pinch? He said, you take this finger and this finger and you put them together, and that's a pinch. Okay. So we weren't real good at it. We just took some now and then and so forth. And I had a pain in my back that I thought was because of a bad neck, and it turned out it was mercury because the pain in my back went away. And then after about 6 months, Betty said, you know, my head doesn't shake anymore. And it never returned. She passed in 2015, some more than 10 years later, and her head never shook again. So that it was mercury causing her head to shake, and that I took her mercury fillings out in 1980. So in some people, just stopping exposure is not enough. That the old toxicology was, you know, if you're exposed to some heavy metal and it doesn't kill you, then stop being exposed, you'll recover. Well, that's a tremendous belief in God, I suppose.
Depending the amount of toxicity you already have in your body, right? I mean,
that I think that's the belief that people have, whether it's true or not. Betty proved it was not true. Is that I took all of the mercury out. I had her tested. We found she was allergic to everything. Redhead, you know, allergic to everything on the planet. And I found the materials that she was not allergic to and put her mouth all back together. She'd had a lot of dental work, and so I fixed it all with the finest dental work I knew how to do. And her head still shook for the next 25 years.
wow.
And then Boyd sent us some powder in a screw cap test tube, and it fixed it. So there are things your body cannot fix that OSR happy to fix.
What about, tell us about your eyesight. You have an anecdote about that, right?
I have a case report about that. And going back to 1957, I was a stupid little shit and I didn't brush my teeth. And when I was 13 years old, I got 13 mercury fillings. And that was the same year I got glasses, because the blackboard, and it was a blackboard, I couldn't see it. It was fuzzy. And so I got glasses, and it made it clear again. And I wore glasses from the time I was 13 until probably about 5 or 10 years ago. And that I kept going back to see my doctor after Boyd sent me that stuff, that powder and that white powder in that tube, and I kept getting my glasses changed. And I asked my ophthalmologist, I said, are my eyes getting that much worse? And he said, no, they're getting better. And I said, better? Do people in their 70s usually get better eyesight? And he says, I don't see that very often. So, more recently, I'm now 20/20 in my right eye, and I'm 20/25 in my left eye. There's a ripple in the lens, which is genetic anyway. And so basically, I don't need glasses. Interestingly enough, is that when I was a kid, just a single lens, I could look near and far, near and far. But as I aged, I got so that the print was too small, you know, so that you ended up with a bifocal. And so Ben Franklin had bifocals. He had a higher magnification down here and less magnification up there. So everything is, you're clear here, but you're not clear here. You're going to see far and near by two different lenses. And what that is your eye is unable to accommodate, is that there is a piece of real clear protein in your eyes called the lens, and it has a muscle that goes all the way around the outside of it. So when you want to look close, the muscle squeezes and makes the lens long so that you can see close. And then when it relaxes, it goes flat so you can see far away. And that's how accommodation works. Well, why do people end up with glasses when they're 40? Is that lens is no longer flexible. Remember we were talking oxidative stress? Well, mercury loves that protein. Protein has gobs of sulfur in it. And so mercury grabs the protein on either side. And so when now you squeeze, now you've got this thing all cross-linked, and it can't squeeze hard enough to let you see close. I can see close. So I'm probably one of the 10 people on the planet that have taken about, 3 or 4 kilos of the stuff. And, but my eyes corrected. And that I went and looked up in the Wikipedia on mercury poisoning, and there's half a dozen different symptoms having to do with eyes. They didn't mention presbyopia, which is not being able to see close, but I would add that to that list. And color, fuzziness, inability to focus, loss of discrimination. Loss of discrimination means things are fuzzy. And so anyway, so eyesight is, but not too many people are going to get a chance to experience that. But maybe the younger generation who don't have a lifetime of toxic exposure. I was talking earlier about the amount of mercury in the transfers from the mother to the fetus in the womb, which is the fetus is going to be almost as high as the mother in the brain by the time it's born. So if we wanted to have healthy children, the government that loved the population would make sure that every woman in that country got a jar of OSR with the instructions, take some before you get pregnant. And that if you took a jar of OSR before you got pregnant, you have a really good chance of having a kid that's smarter than you are. Now, you might not want that because they might be smarter. They get all those A's in school.
Yeah.
I only got C's.
Excellent. Yeah,
We've been seeing so great results, David. You know, like we've been working with the OSR for at least 2 years, I think, almost
Yeah.
3 years now.
Yeah.
And we've been seeing like great results, and we see like the younger the child is, better the results.
Yeah. The
Right?
faster
It
they
works way faster.
Less damage. OSR doesn't fix anything. It's not a drug. It takes away the knife that's in your back. What feels whole is your body's got to heal. So if you're 3 months old, if you pull the knife out of their back, it heals faster than if you're 30. And if you pull the knife out when you're 60, it takes longer to heal. Every longer the injury occurs, the more scar tissue there is. And everybody knows, oh, you know, I fell off my bicycle and I got banged this shoulder, you know, umpteen years ago, and now it hurts on rainy days and stuff like that. Scar tissue. And so it doesn't fix scar tissue. And that's why the sooner you get on it, that's why I was saying, Mom, get some before you get pregnant, and then give the kids some after they're born. Because, you know, the sooner you get the heavy metals out, the faster that kid's going to heal, the better you're going to feel. The oxidative stress is not good for you.
You know, we recently saw a film about the accident in Chernobyl so many years ago in the 80s. You may remember that. And there was there was one part that really struck me. You know, there's this one lady who was visiting her husband was a firefighter, and he was you know, he was the first responder to the whole thing there, and he was taken to the hospital. He died in a horrible way, you can imagine. And his wife was visiting him and visiting all the time. And she didn't tell anybody that she was pregnant. And at the moment of birth, well, the child died after a couple of days or weeks, you know, and she survived. So the child had absorbed all the radiation of the mother. So you can imagine, you can, you know, export that to everything, you know, heavy metals and whatnot. So the children, so this thing about taking the OSR before even planning to have a family, it's I think it would be a very wise thing to do. Yeah.
Lance Williams, mute your microphone, please. The pilot,
I don't know.
the pilots that flew helicopters over with hods of cement, the way they got it to, you know, settle down was they basically bombed it with cement, like the firefighters do when there's a forest fire. They came over and dropped tons and tons and tons of cement on it, and that even the pilots flying above it ended up with so much radiation they died, and of a horrible death. But you look at the ultimate cause of death from radiation, it's called oxidative stress. The blast of those radiation molecules caused oxidative stress.
David, there's a person who just sent a question here in our group, and again it touches on the subject of how long it takes. So he's saying as follows. He says, you mentioned earlier that the mice studies that the mercury complex stayed in the bodies of the mice, but it has caused no damage. So he says he'd like to have an understanding as of the NBMI removes the mercury from the or just binds it, renders non-toxic, and stays forever. Are there any unknown long-term effects of having this NBMI mercury complex precipitate in our body or brain long-term? Again, that question pops up in a different way.
Let me correct it. It does not stay forever. It leaves through a process called the P450 system that is mediated by glutathione and an enzyme called CYP. There's several different versions of it, but what the CYP enzyme does, it takes this inert particle, NBMI, hooked to, you can put whatever metal you want in here, they're bound up, and it puts a little hook on it and drags it out to the poop chute at about the same rate or maybe a little bit faster than your body gets rid of mercury. So no, it doesn't stay forever. It basically stops the poisoning instantly, and then it leaves at a steady rate, but through the P450 system. The more you take, the higher your glutathione levels are. So if you take enough, your glutathione is just really active, and it's going to help you get rid of not just the OSR that is bound up to some metal, but all the other crap that's in our society.
Right. So agrotoxics and all these pesticides.
Exhaustive. My wife that had the Parkinson's was sensitive to everything. If a diesel truck went by, she would have a blistering headache for hours. And that's because of the hydrocarbons coming out of the exhaust of a diesel truck. Took enough OSR and it didn't bother her. She was just very low on glutathione because she was metal poisoned. And that when you solve that problem, lots of other stuff gets solved as well.
So, but what about the brain? So, okay, so let's talk about that. So you have the brain, it detoxifies in a different way as the rest of the body, as I understand, and the bones too, right? The bones take a little longer for anything that's in the bone. So let's start with the brain. What is the process there of detoxification in the brain?
The brain is protected by what's called the blood-brain barrier. Mm-hmm. And nothing gets in or out that the body doesn't want in or out. And that fat-soluble things get in. So mercury vapor that comes off fillings gets in. But once it's in, the body has an enzyme called catalase, and it changes that mercury vapor to Hg plus and then Hg plus plus. Mm-hmm. Now it can't get out. So it's a one-way trap for heavy metals. OSR, like mercury, has no charge on it, so it gets in, finds that mercury, says, how would you like to stop binding to this brain and bind to me? And the OSR says, the mercury says, yeah, that's a good idea. And it binds it and becomes a non-toxic particle. How does it get out? We don't know. We can measure it when we have rats, but nobody's given us a brain for a biopsy. Hey, how would you like a biopsy? No, but we have animals that we can expose them to mercury, give them OSR, and then measure the metabolites that are coming out in their stool. And we can measure the enzymes that are being used to do that. And that's been done. But we don't know how many years it's going to take. Interestingly enough, we do know how many years it takes for mercury to get out of your brain.
Huh.
Half-life of mercury in the brain is 27 years. So if you want to just wait 27 years, half the mercury that's in your brain today, as long as you never go near a volcano or eat a fish or have a filling or get some of the vaccines that have mercury, half of it will go out in 27 years. So that we assume that that's probably the same rate as mercury OSR goes out, maybe faster, maybe slower, doesn't make any difference because it's a particle. It is like having something inert. And that people say, well, you know, it'll junk up the cell. It'll fill the cell up. Remember Karen Wetterhahn? The entire amount of mercury she was exposed to would sit on the top of the pin.
Jeez.
So that's infinitesimal amount of mercury. That's because mercury is a horrible poison. In teeny little teeny bits of it will kill you. So people don't get that. They just, it's incomprehensible. You know, they think it's got to be like a shoebox full or a boatload. No, it's a teensy tiny bit. And that's why it's so stupid for us to continue to put in mercury fillings every day throughout the United States, throughout Brazil. Tens of thousands of dentists are putting mercury in people's teeth every day. And the United Nations, Brazil signed an agreement, says we're going to stop doing that. But,
2030.
Not till 2030. Why don't we stop tomorrow? I'm going to quit beating you with this stick in 2030.
In the meantime, yeah, have some.
But in the meantime, it's going to pound away on you with this heavy metal. Oh, stupid. So
You know, this kind of, I don't want to obviously offend anybody about with this commentary, but this paranoia about does it leave the body or not, and you know, we can understand that, but I compare it to a person who is a criminal. You know, a person who is a criminal and he's running around committing crimes. You know, he's caught by the police. He's put with handcuffs inside of a cell, close the cell. You know, until the person is in there, he's not going to do any more harm to society. And it's the same way I see it. So it doesn't matter if it's in this jail or that jail over there, as long as it's not harming me, you know, God bless Boyd Haley.
God bless Boyd Haley. I'm with you there. And, you know, that's a good example. I like that one. We locked that criminal up.
Good analogy. Yeah. So, William, I think we have some questions in
the
the
chat.
chat, and we can also ask people for open their mics that they
Yeah,
can ask questions
I
directly
have
to
a
David.
difficulty, Tavi, I have a difficulty here reading the questions. Maybe you can help me there.
Okay. No, here we have just me asking if David sent Boyd a kiss for her. Asking about aluminium, because child vaccines have lots of aluminium, but I think
How's that, David? What did you say?
I'm going to see Boyd in September.
Listen, you know,
Okay.
let us very briefly say who Jasmine is, okay? Jasmine is a mom of a beautiful baby who started taking OSR, I think maybe close to 6 months or 5 months ago. And the baby was 4 years old. And after a couple of doses already, maybe I think 4 or 5, correct me, Jasmine, if I'm wrong, he started talking, you know, and he's totally normal now. He behaves like a normal kid. He plays in the playground. He's very quiet. He sleeps very well. He's sleeping all night long. There's so many beautiful things happen. And like Jasmine, you know, many other mothers. So, you know, I just wanted to clear out who this Jasmine is she's in love with Boyd
That's
Haley.
right.
And she promised to become Boyd's eternal slave.
He used some slaves. You know, it really is a miracle. And that the problem is the people that caused the injury to Jasmine's baby are still stuck in denial. Oh, it wasn't us. We didn't do it. No, ain't no problem there. No, we didn't do anything. Boyd points out Boyd testified 3 times before the congressional committee that was investigating mercury. Once on vaccines, once on the environment, and then once on filling.
Yeah.
And that he taught the chairman of the committee, Dan Burton, the questions to ask, because I got to tell you that Dan said, isn't there some mercury in the hepatitis B vaccine? And the FDA spokesperson was there and says, oh, it's just a little tiny bit. And he says, well, the reason you're here today is we're looking for a scientific answer. My bartender would say just a little tiny bit of vermouth in my cocktail to make a dry martini. I was looking more for a number. And that he said, well, okay, it's just 1%. And Dan said, there you go again. Was it 1% of an elephant or a mountain or a gnat's whisker? And he said, well, it's 25 micrograms. And Dan, who already knew the answer, said, oh my God, 25 micrograms? That's more than that EPA would let that baby be exposed to for the next 6 months. And the FDA guy says, well, we're not going to give him any more vaccines for 6 months. And Dan picked up his glass of water. He says, if I drank the water now, I would die. You're telling me you can inject a baby with 6 months worth of mercury and it doesn't cause any problem? That's what we're saying.
Oh my gosh. So David, we have like a really special case from Eric. He's been taking OSR and he's having like some symptoms. Eric, if you can open your mic and ask your questions, and for David, please, because it is a special case.
Okay. Hi, David. My name is Eric. I have a pharmacy background. I've been poisoned for many years. I had about 13, 14 amalgams, big ones all over my teeth. I used to grind my teeth at night too, so I was constantly swallowing this stuff. I've dealt with a lot of pretty severe anxiety, ADHD. I would get tics. It's slowly gotten better over time, but brain fog and really, really bad chronic fatigue syndrome, especially over the last couple of years. I've had a little background of trying different chelators, and they just made me so much worse. I mean, basically hospitalized me. But I just started, this OSR a couple of weeks ago. No major side effects, but I do feel like I do feel even more fatigue sometimes on it as I'm going up in dose. I'm kind of I want to say I'm getting pretty close to like 200 twice a day. I'm around there between 150 to 200 twice a day. I'm kind of going back and forth between the two. And I don't know how to explain it, but I feel kind of high when I take the medicine. It's like, it gives me this like really strange sensation. And then after a few hours, when that wears off, my mood goes down. I get a bit of a headache. Um, I also can't tolerate molybdenum very well. That's another kind of a strange thing. Every time I take it, I just don't feel well. So yeah, that's kind of been my case so far. It's only been about, how long have I been taking it? I don't know, 2 weeks maybe? Has it been 2 weeks? I can't
Around
remember.
2 weeks.
I can't remember, but yeah, it's kind of for me, I want to say special case because I I feel like I was so toxic. My body's so toxic. I'm sensitive to basically everything, and I have gut issues as well. So, what do you think about moving up in doses? Should I take it very slowly? I don't know. Any recommendations you might have? Just kind of hearing my case. There's more details I can add. I can't kind of come up with it off the top of my head right now, but just a lot of symptoms I go through.
I don't think you're taking enough. That if you feel high, that might be how you're supposed to feel all the time anyway.
Mm.
And then it peters out because the molecule likes oxidative stress better than it likes the heavy metals. So if you don't take enough, you don't get beyond the threshold. All of our clinical trials are either done with single dose. We did 100, a 300, and a 600. We did 2 of them at 600, or 3 of them at 600, and that no serious adverse events. So unlike if you're in the pharma background, pull out the MSDS sheet and read on everything, you know, X-shade, you know, 20% mortality, even supposedly benign substances like aspirin or Tylenol. How does Tylenol cause autism? It causes oxidative stress, for heaven's sakes. It's the same problem, just a different substance causing it. Interestingly enough, OSR binds the oxidative molecule that Tylenol makes. Tylenol makes a molecule of NAPQI, and I can't tell you the whole, actually, you probably know the whole word for it, but NAPQI is oxidative stress. That's what's causing the baby's brains to fry. And the mother can take it and it goes in there. It's not, you know, like, what causes this? It's not one thing, it's everything. Anything that causes oxidative stress in that baby is going to harm that baby. That's how that works. It's this, not that. No, it's all of them. The correct answer is all of the above. So a lot of your symptoms sound mental, energy, anxiety, euphoria, and that you, like you said, one of the horrible things are people that have mercury fillings that grind their teeth, that clench their teeth. We had an experiment that we did years ago with a sheep, and they put in a dozen mercury fillings in a single sheep, but it was a radioactive filling. So you can see exactly where the mercury distributed. And it was a real short experiment. It was 30 days long. And then the sheep was fed hay. A sheep chews for about 7 hours a day, about like a teenager with gum. And the 7 hours a day, the sheep was allowed to chew. And what ended up at the end of those 30 days was the mercury had spread from the fillings to every tissue in that sheep's body. It had spread completely all the way around to the hoof, to the kidney, to the brain, to every tissue in that sheep's body. So it's insane to allow anybody to put mercury fillings in people's teeth, and that's the bottom line, is that there's no excuse for that, and yet it's still done today. And you know, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I have a picture here I'm going to show you. Let's rotate it 90 degrees. You rotate right, and let's expand it. All right. And let me show you the sheep. Well, first off, that's not working. Okay. Excuse me a second while I get my screen share working here. Oh, here we are, share. So I'm going to back up just a little bit. The gold miners of Ecuador. And this is a graph of the adverse events from the gold miners. And you can look and see they had the black line is the placebo group that got nothing until after the experiment was over. The beige line is the gentleman that got 100 milligrams. And the yellow one is the gold miners that got 300 milligrams. And as you can see, these adverse events, the 36 subjects, the black line is clear over here with 24 for headaches, and that the gold had 7. But look down here, no yellow. Pains of all kinds went from 10 down to 1 or 2. And that's why I was saying, I don't think you're taking enough, because if you were as poisoned as the gold miners, and you probably are, that you're not over that threshold there, that you're still up in this part here having headaches and pain and all that stuff that goes along with being mercury poisoned. So there is that, and the bottom line is that if you take enough of it, that you'll get beyond those thresholds. Let's see if I can find that sheep. The sheep. Let's see if I can find sheep scan. There it is. Sheep scan. So this is.
There it is. Yeah.
Went to the dentist and got fillings, and that is that clear to you guys? Is it? Do I need to? I can't move it up the screen too much. So let's see if I lift the bottom up, if you'll see it better. No, it won't. Okay, so this picture at the bottom is the C over here is the jawbone, and you can see there are no fillings in this sheep anymore. They took a saw and cut off the teeth. The animal's dead. They cut the teeth off. So all this black in the jaw is mercury that went from the filling down through the tooth into the jawbone. And remember, this sheep is chewing like you did, bruxing, grinding your teeth at night. Mm-hmm. So 30 days turned the jawbone black with mercury. This B here, you can see the outline of 2 little kidneys. So it loaded up the kidneys. D is the liver. You can't see the heart in this picture because the intestines are so full of mercury, it has just totally made it black. But this what happened to you within 30 days of getting your fillings. And imagine what happens in 30 years. Oh my God. So does taking one little tiny pet pill going to make that go away? No. But it's a good start. It's better than waiting for the next 27 years. But look how little it is in the brain. But the symptoms people notice are in the brain. But they did an experiment in Portugal on children, and they showed damage to the kidney almost immediately. And that's the beginning of kidney failure, which is, the reason people get kidney transplants. Well, who wants to lose their kidneys? I don't think that's a good idea. Okay, good. So I just had to show you that. And so I'm going to stop.
That's an amazing image there. What happened?
And you know what the American Dental Association said about that? Sheep chew too much.
No, and we don't, no? So like we don't, when we eat, we don't chew, right?
No. And so then they did the experiment. That what's interesting is they chose the sheep because it chews a lot. They wanted to see what happens. The second experiment, the ADA, American Dental Association, has never commented on. The second experiment was on monkeys. Same thing happened to the monkeys. I said, sheep chew too much? How about the monkeys? We're not talking about that. So it's not, it's that was, let me tell you the year on that experiment. 30 years ago, 1987. But they did the experiment in 86. So 30 years ago, they poisoned sheep with mercury fillings. So
shame on the NDA. Shame.
now remember, they beat Semmelweis to death when he said, wash your hands. Medicine does not change. No industry. There's a book called Peter Drucker called The Age of Discontinuity. And Peter points out that no business ever changes willingly. Catholic Church locked Galileo up when he said that this looks like the sun is going around us. Well, we can't have that. Lock that guy up. No industry changes willingly. What changes the industry are you people. You change the industry because I like half the dentists in the United States no longer use mercury. And they say, well, isn't that great? Half the dentists don't use mercury. And I said, well, the reason they don't use mercury is because somebody walked in and said, say, you use mercury fillings? And they said, why, yes, it's the best way to fix a tooth. And he said, I think I left the motor running in my car. I didn't put money in the meter. I'll be back. And they leave. And pretty soon the dentists figure out, that's not the right answer to that question because all I got to see after they answered that question was the back of their head. So if I want them to stay, the correct answer is, oh, no, we don't use that. So half the dentists say, oh, no, we don't use that. But are they careful about it? No, they're just as stupid as they ever were. But they learned the correct answer. Well, that's better than still putting more in. So anyway, the bottom line is that the population has to become familiar with the science, with the evidence, and then make a decided and deliberate attempt to get the profession to change. And that anybody in this podcast that's listening that wants to have healthy babies and grow their economy with people that don't have mental illness and cardiovascular disease and lung disease and neurological diseases will tell their government, it's time for you guys to do the job we elected you to do. They don't have to have a vested interest. It's not going to cost any more to not have mercury filling because you're going to have people not in the mental hospital, not in the cardiac ward, not with the lung disease. You got to save money on this, so you quit doing that. It's not economic. It's stupid is what it is. Stop being stupid. That's my pitch for you guys to be an activist. I've been mercury fillings since I was in the Navy in 1973. Thank you very much. We were trying to get the level down to 100. 100 is considered immediately hazardous to your health.
Yeah, but I think, the main problem is not even, I would go a little beyond that. It's not even the politicians or the people who were elected, is the people who control them, where follow the money that's flowing into the dental schools, the medicine schools in the world. Who is writing the medicine books where they study, who is benefiting from the planet being sick. But let's not go there because we wouldn't stop here talking about this supposed conspiracy that we're talking about. So, David, there is a question here. We parents of autistic kids, we feel very, very stressed. Sometimes I feel like I cannot relax fully. I am all the time in a state of stress. Sometimes I wonder if I am suffering from chronic stress or if it's just oxidative stress. What are the early signs of oxidative stress?
Probably not. Accelerated aging. Oxidative stress is aging. That, you know, anything that you associate with being old is oxidative stress. Pain is one of the principal things. If you look at those gold miners that I showed you a minute ago, is that pain was way over here. They had all kinds of pain. You know, pains in their joints, in their brain. The headache is basically oxidative stress in the brain. And so, you know, pain is one of the most common symptoms of oxidative stress. But, you know, even insanity is oxidative stress. If you look at the dentists, what's wrong with them was neurological, psychological, immunological. They don't have a pill for that, but it does destroy your immune system. Lung, fluids in the lungs and so forth, and cardio. So all of those things are oxidative stress. And so oxidative stress is not a disease. Oxidative stress is a condition that everybody who's heavy metal poison suffers from. Or, you know, like if you look at people that run the triathlons, where they run, you know, 50 miles and swim 20 and bicycle 100, their longevity is not that good. And because they expose their bodies to huge amounts of oxidative stress, and that basically accelerates aging. So, honestly, OSR is anti-aging. Same way that vitamins that are antioxidants are anti-aging. And if you want to slow down aging, you don't expose yourself to causes oxidation. That's, you know, we're basically going to rust away. Oxidation is rust. And so you can say, well, how are you feeling today? I'm rusting out.
Tabitha, do you have any more questions there? And I think it's...
You know, I want to say this about RFK. And that RFK knows Boyd Haley and has interacted with Boyd on many occasions. And that before he was ever in government, he called Boyd. Unfortunately, Boyd had a stroke and was able to tell him, call David Kennedy, and he never did. I've sent him a letter. I've had it hand delivered. Lynn Redwood is the mother of an autistic child that RFK asked to start with him Children's Health Defense, which is basically trying to defend children against the insults of industry. And he's talking about food. He is really, really busy. There's lots of things wrong in this world today. But Lynn Redwood had a child that was, I think, 6 or 7 years old or something like that, and wasn't toilet trained and didn't speak. And Boyd gave her some OSR, and the kid started speaking and learned to control his bowels, and then, you know, lives independently now. I don't know if he's got I've been to dinner with a formerly autistic child that has a degree in electrical engineering, working for the telecom company in Switzerland. So they can recover if you get them soon enough. So it's not like they don't know. It's just that there is a third rail. Is that if you touch that mercury issue, and you all I got to do is listen. That they badmouth anybody that says anything bad about food or fillings or dental amalgam or vaccines. They will drum you out of town, because those industries are worth many billions of dollars, and they know that if they allow the truth to come out, their revenue will go down. And it's not like Galileo got locked up because he said the Earth was being circled by the sun rather than the Earth circling the sun, which doesn't work out really well. But that is not logical. He was being logical. And yet the illogical resistance to change. And there's books on it about how society doesn't change. The only thing that changes society is us, you and me. And so you need to stand up, flap your lips, and don't put up with the bullshit. When they tell you, oh, there can't be anything wrong with injecting babies with mercury or putting mercury fillings in people's teeth, you say, bullshit. It's a deadly poison. There's no reason to use it in anybody's body. And if you got it in there, get it out with OSR and tell your government to get their foot off Boyd Haley's neck so that everybody can have it. He sold this as a supplement legally, and it cost pennies. It was $60 for 9 grams. 9 grams. The gold miners in Ecuador got 4 grams. So for $30, you could have got as much OSR as the gold miners did. So how come it's now 500? Well, that's because of, or 650 or 1,000. That's because of government action. The government is doing everything they can to keep the population from getting their hands on OSR. Well, why are they doing that? Because it makes them look like they're not doing their job. The Environmental Working Group measured baby food and pet food. There's heavy metals in both of them. We have an entire agency of the government examining food. Their name is the Food and Drug Administration. How come they didn't know there were heavy metals in baby food and pet food? Bottom line, they don't care. They get their retirement funds, they get their vacation pay, and they can obfuscate and obscure and pretend that they have done their job and continue to collect the paycheck. But until somebody else, an independent nonprofit, goes out, Jane Hightower went down to Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco, bought 1 copy of every fish there, had them all measured. None of them are edible. None of them. And she contacted them at the FNDA. And they said, we don't measure domestic fish. Well, I know how to go ahead and save a lot of money. We can get rid of all them people because they ain't doing their job. If they're not protecting the food, we can just call it the Drug Administration, right?
Absolutely. But there we are. No, that's what we're trying to do.
We have a question here regarding from Jasmine. What do you say about heart palpitations? Is it a sign of heavy metal poison?
What kind of patient?
Heart palpitations.
Heart palpitations.
Heart palpitations.
Oh. Yeah. Tell me about it. Yeah. The heart beats with the 2 nodes, SA and AV. And, if you take the muscles out and put them in a dish, they'll beat. But the SA node tells this AV node when to beat, and the heart wrings the blood out. That the reason that they don't beat right is because the conduction from the SA to the AV is inhibited. Well, what kind of stuff would do that? Well, that would be the heavy metals. So, yeah, and there are other things that do it too. And, like caffeine and other things, nicotine, that's a very sensitive little conduction. So you don't want heavy metals in your diet. You don't want heavy metals in your body. And so that is definitely linked to the arrhythmias in hearts. And that they did a study on dentists. And I love the dentist study because, my dad was a dentist, my granddad was a dentist. Granddad had IDCM. My dad only lived to be 100, but he couldn't feel his feet for the last decade. And that was called peripheral neuropathy. That's neurological disease. And that, so what is, where I was going with that is that Mercury screws with everything. Just, you can quote David Kennedy, Mercury screws with everything. So if you've got something wrong, it might be that Mercury caused it, and that it's not a disease, it's a condition. So the drugs, here's where OSR is. The FDA, or just the DA, Drug Administration, wants Boyd Haley or his company to prove that OSR treats a disease. And we asked, what disease do you think mercury causes? And they said, we don't know. So, now we got to go discover a disease that it causes and then cure it. Is that so? Yes, heart palpitations, drugs cause that. Mercury causes that. Metals cause that. Heart attack causes that. So.
Okay. So we have more questions here. So from Eric, is it okay to dose OSR every other day versus every single day? Or is it okay to take breaks during the week?
No need to take a break, but it's certainly perfectly fine to take it when you feel like it. It's like when Boyd sent me the stuff in the screw cap test tube. We didn't take it every day. It was sitting on the kitchen table, and let's take some of Boyd Haley, and we didn't do it very often, really. I mean, it was a test tube. It was not it was you can get more than that, for your water filter thing. Lots more than that. The gold miners only got 4.2 gram, and there was probably maybe twice that in the test tube. So, but so it hangs around for 48 hours at a pretty good level. 72, it's down to trace amounts, so it doesn't build up in your body, but the benefits do. In all of our studies, in the gold miners and the iron studies, is that not only did it benefit them, but you go out. So if we do a 2-week study, that we follow them for 4 weeks. If we do a 4-week study, we follow them for 8 weeks. In both of those studies, the 600 milligrams for 8 weeks, and the 300 milligrams and the 100 milligrams for 4 weeks. But the tail, the benefits remained. It did not rebound. It did not go back up. The level that we knocked down stayed down. And unlike the other chelators, if you take DMSA and you show a drop in your blood lead level, day after tomorrow, it's back up where it was. What's that tell you? Is you did not remove a significant amount of the lead. You just swept it from the blood into the kidney. Wrong idea.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if there is any other question, Tabitha, because I think we're hitting already a 2-hour talk.
Yeah.
We do not want to abuse your time anymore that we have already, David. But I guess.
Well, I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk to all you folks, and we'll do it again sometime. I do want to put a disclaimer on here that I'm speaking on behalf of myself, not on behalf of any company or any agency of the government or any organization other than just David Kennedy. These are my opinions, and if you disagree with them, I'll be glad to support them with the scientific literature and or communications I've had with others. And but it's not about promoting a drug. It's about promoting community action to get the government to get their foot off Boyd Haley's neck, because that's the only reason why you don't have OSR in your medicine cabinet. So that if you wanted to go out and eat a fish taco, you could take a little OSR ahead of time. At least 2 hours on an empty stomach. So that way you'd be like those rats. You can't kill a rat with mercury if he's got the OSR in his stomach.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and that's very appropriate. Thank you very much, David. And thank you everyone for being here with us. We will be posting the video very soon for everyone who could not be with us today. And yeah, thank you again. And I think we can close the meeting now.
I want to make
Thank you, David.
in the chat, they're talking about being banned. It's never banned anywhere. What it is, it's an unapproved drug. And that if you try to import an unapproved drug any country in the world, they won't import it. So effectively banned, but never banned, is that it's listed as an unapproved drug. So by making an unapproved drug, they expect people from getting it.
Yes, actually, it's called an orphan drug, right?
It's a what?
Orphan
It's
drug.
an orphan.
Well, it is approved, designated, I should say, as an orphan drug. It's not approved to use for an orphan indication. The orphan indication is acute mercury intoxication, because we showed that you can't kill a rat with mercury. And so we treated the gold miners and they said, well, that was chronic exposure. It's not acute.
Okay. So, David, we have one last question, but it's in the group. What does David think of DMSA? It's a specific type of DMSA that people are being using now.
It's water soluble, and water soluble can never ever get to the brain. Mercury killed Karen Wetterhahn because it got in her brain. So it's silly to try to treat the fluids in your body when the problem's inside the cell. So if you don't have inside the cell, you're not going to stop the problem.
Okay. And one last question. You don't need molybdenum if you're not thiol sensitive, right?
Don't have to take molybdenum at all. And the question you can ask, are you thiol sensitive? How do you know? Can you eat garlic? Yeah, I like garlic. Can you eat eggs? Yeah, I like it. You're not thiol sensitive. Get over it.
Can you drink wine?
I like some right now. Thank you. No, the thiol sensitivity occurs in severely mercury poisoned people. It does happen. And there was a thing called Stay Fresh, was they squirted on salad bars and stuff like that to keep the lettuce and that stuff fresh. And it was a thiol. There are people that can get extremely ill from eating thiols if they're thiol sensitive, and that's a symptom of mercury poisoning. So what they needed was some OSR, a little dose, a little dose, a little dose, and then they get well. So it's a non-issue if you're eating thiols every day, like eggs and garlic, and people know people know if they're thiol sensitive, because they've come across this problem over and over again and said, oh, I eat that and I get a headache, or I do this, so people learn to avoid the things that have thiols in them. But that doesn't mean that they can't take OSR. It means that they are terribly mercury poisoned. And so what they need is OSR, but they have to go easy so that they don't kill themselves taking too many thiols at once. And, all your binders are thiols. They say, and sometimes people who are a little bit weak in their thiols will overdose with binders. Well, binders don't bind. That's the problem, is that they attract, but they don't lock it up. OSR locks it up. But binders are all thiols. So if you're taking a handful of binders and OSR, you just took a shovel full of thiols. Well, you know, if you're a little weak in your thiol digestion, that might get you irritated. So just, it doesn't need, the rats only got OSR. They didn't get anything else. So OSR, we know, does not need any help. I get people trying to dissolve it in olive oil or does it do it in this and that. It doesn't need any help. It'll do it all by itself.
Okay.
All right. You guys,
Perfect.
bye-bye.
Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you. Bye.